The storm raged outside, lashing the forest with wind and rain that shattered branches and flooded the narrow paths. I had thought I would be alone tonight, wrapped in the silence of my small hut at the edge of the wilderness. The fire crackled in the hearth, offering warmth and a flicker of comfort against the howl of the tempest. Then came the sound of movement at the door, shuffling feet, the snap of wet leaves under boots, and low, controlled breathing. The door creaked open, and a group of women stepped inside, drenched and wary. Their eyes were sharp, scanning every corner, every shadow, as if the storm outside had carried dangers beyond my own imagination. They were huntresses, fierce and unyielding, with the aura of predators honed by years of survival. One of them, taller than the rest with dark hair plastered to her shoulders, leaned against the doorway and whispered, her voice sharp but tinged with desire, "I saw him first. Mine." I froze. Not from fear, but from recognition. Their gazes lingered on me in a way that felt both threatening and intimate. I could sense the tension between them, a pack's instinct to stake claims, to challenge, to dominate, and yet, beneath it, a trace of curiosity. My survival had brought me here, but theirs had taught them to recognize strength in others, and I could feel it in every glance. The fire reflected off the blades they carried, weapons marked with scratches, bloodstains, and history. I noticed the scars along the taller huntress's arm, cuts that twisted and healed unevenly, the marks of her whip and battles fought under a ruthless queen's reign. Rumors of the queen had reached me in whispers, tales of fear and death, and yet here was a survivor, bearing her scars like a badge of honor. Only one among us had endured her cruelty, and I was that one. "I mean no harm," I said, careful not to move too quickly. "I have a hearth, and there is warmth. Take shelter if you need it. The storm will pass." They exchanged glances, assessing whether my offer was genuine or a trap. One of the smaller huntresses stepped forward, rain dripping from her cloak. "We do not trust easily," she said, eyes never leaving mine. "We are survivors, just as you are. But trust is earned." I nodded. "Then let us earn it together, if only for tonight." The storm's fury made conversation difficult. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and rain drummed a relentless rhythm against the roof. Yet within the hut, a fragile truce formed. They moved to dry themselves, their weapons laid carefully aside. Every motion spoke of discipline, practice, and wariness. Even as they warmed their hands by the fire, I could feel their eyes on me, calculating, measuring, as though they were testing the limits of my endurance and patience. The tallest one, the one who had whispered her claim, finally sat across from me, her eyes never leaving mine. "You survived her," she said quietly, almost a statement to herself rather than a question. "The queen. Her whip left scars that never healed. Most died before the pain ended." I looked down at my hands, remembering the cruel lashings, the nights spent nursing wounds that never fully closed, and the endless weight of fear that had been constant in her presence. "I survived," I replied simply, "because fear alone is not enough to kill a man. Endurance, courage, and sometimes a refusal to surrender, these are what keep you alive." She studied me for a long moment, a storm of emotions crossing her face. Awe, recognition, perhaps a hint of respect. Few do what you did. Most crumble under her rule, and the survivors, they are shadows of themselves. You are not a shadow. The fire's warmth did little to thaw the chill that had settled over my body from months of wandering, but the recognition in her voice warmed me in ways the fire never could. I was alone in this world in ways that few could understand, yet here was a pack of huntresses, fierce and independent, acknowledging my survival as if it were proof of something greater. The storm outside began to subside, though the wind still rattled the trees. I poured water into a cup, offering it to her first, and she accepted, her fingers brushing mine briefly. That small contact carried a weight neither of us spoke of, the acknowledgment of endurance, of pain, and of scars both visible and hidden. "They fear the queen," she said softly. "But you You walk as if nothing can touch you. How? I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. Because I have seen death, and I have survived. Her whip left scars, yes, but the lessons it carved into me are sharper than any blade. Survival is not just physical, it is endurance of spirit, and the refusal to let cruelty define you. The Huntresses exchanged glances. I could feel their internal debate, the clash of instincts and desires. The tallest one whispered again, a repetition of her claim, "I saw him first. Mine." Yet there was no accusation in her tone this time, more a recognition that survival and strength had value beyond mere possession. We sat in the warmth of the fire, the storm now only a memory outside, and for the first time in months I felt the fragile stirrings of connection. In a world ruled by cruelty, power, and fear, survival was not enough. Understanding, trust, and the quiet acknowledgement of each other's endurance were just as vital. When the Huntresses finally left, stepping into the calm aftermath of the storm, I watched them go, knowing they had seen me fully, not just as a man, but as a survivor. And I knew that the scars we carried, both theirs and mine, were not marks of defeat, but of endurance. In the shadow of the ruthless queen's cruelty, only the unbroken, the resilient, and the steadfast would endure. I returned to the fire, alone once more, yet not empty. The encounter had reminded me that survival was never solitary. Even in a world scarred by pain, cruelty, and war, humanity endured through recognition, respect, and the quiet bonds formed in shared trials. And as the night deepened, I knew that tomorrow, and the days beyond, I would continue to walk forward, scarred, tested, and unbroken. The Queen's cruelty had marked me, her whip had left scars, but she had not broken me. And that knowledge, carried quietly in my bones, was stronger than any storm, any pack, and any world that sought to crush the human spirit.